America's Mayor Live. And tonight we have, I think we could call it a special edition. We'll call it the Father's Day night edition with my son, Andrew Giuliani, who you've seen many times before, who's on ABC, WABC radio every Sunday.
So you're identifying as a father tonight.
I'm identifying as yes, you can be a father. I don't know.
Not a mother. I just want to make sure.
I'm not sure. I was reading this article, and I was going
to be clear.
Now you got me really messed up, Andrew, because I was reading this article right before, and I was going to try to cover it tonight. And I got so confused, and I knew I'd be somehow canceled, rejected, shot, or hung. There's something about you're not allowed, you can't define a woman, but you can define a man.
Well,
you're not
certainly
you're
one
not
of our Supreme
allowed
Court
to say,
justices can't define a woman.
Well, there's a reason for it, but I couldn't, for the life of me, I read the darn thing twice, and I could not understand what they were saying. You can't say that you're a woman definitively.
Okay.
But you can say that you're a man, even though both can be transgender.
Right.
So maybe we'll cover it.
Okay. Well, it sounds like we've got to
go look for somebody with a 200 IQ.
Yeah.
Who can figure, or maybe with no IQ.
Right. That sounds like a question on a standardized test or something.
Yeah.
Like that we're going to have to get to.
I'm sure there were people the other day at the Pride celebration of the White House that could have answered this question. Because, I mean, Biden has done enormously disgraceful things as president. In fact, laughing about it is almost sacrilegious because he's gotten people killed. I mean, I just don't believe that any of those people in Ukraine would have been killed if Trump had remained president. I think Putin would be willing to give you an affidavit that he would not have attacked. He would not have attacked Ukraine if Trump were president. Mm-hmm. He just isn't stupid. But so Dopey becomes president. All those people get killed. All the people get killed in Afghanistan. People are getting killed from fentanyl, which you know from your work in the White House on fentanyl left and right, because he keeps the border open. But I'm gonna concentrate on this other thing because this is the day before yesterday at the White House, they had a Pride celebration. The president and first lady were really, really happy. And he gave a glowing speech about how courageous all the transgender people are.
Most courageous people he's ever seen.
More than our military, more than
not the people that made the. I believe it was just Memorial Day recently, right? You could have talked about the people who made the ultimate sacrifice.
Yeah, that one he had a hard time even reading.
But by the way, I do find the perspective pretty amazing on this. That for Memorial Day, we have one day for those Americans who made the ultimate sacrifice. Yet,
he would
for Pride.
He wants to add more days for Pride. Plus, they completely violated the rules for American flags. They displaced the American flag with the Pride flag. Yeah. There's a guy actually getting prosecuted for throwing dirt on the Pride flag, and we don't prosecute people for burning the American flag.
Seemed like your First Amendment right. Yeah. Right? It would seem like a First Amendment right to do that, right? That's freedom of speech.
No, that's hate speech.
That's hate speech.
But burning the American flag is happy speech.
It's happy speech, I guess.
Well, Mayor and Andrew, they actually pressured Karine Jean, what's her name? The press secretary for Biden. Right. And she claims that it was a day of love and a day of this and day of that. So flag code was not violated.
And this is the reason why this woman, what the heck is her name?
Rose.
Hold
on one second here. I was just I'm transfixed by the pictures over here. Some people say fake news, but we're saying fake breasts when you see this picture.
These are definitely
Rose Montoya, who was a biological man, and I guess the picture's probably coming up, but there it is.
Yeah, there it is.
That's a better view of it right there.
You got the picture up?
Lights it there. So much for restoring decency and normalcy to the White House. Remember they talked about all the norms that Trump was breaking, how indecent this White House is. I'd say it's pretty indecent to me.
With a bunch of kids around?
Unbelievable.
There were also happened to be children around at this celebration. And I should add, she did not keep her hands there for the entire celebration. For most of the time, her hands were removed. But apparently, the New York Post has higher standards than the White House, because the White House allowed her to walk around like that. And I am told, but I'm not sure this is true.
She's banned now.
I would say, and one of the things I wanted to tell you was I was in D.C. about a week ago. I saw in our nation's capital probably 10 times the amount of pride flags as I did American flags. Think about that. In our nation's capital, Congress, the White House, all of these incredible memorials and monuments and government buildings, probably 10-1 pride flags to American flags.
This is probably a movement that we don't even realize the strength of it, because if you think about it, it's kind of taken over the agenda. How much conversation is there about it? How much turmoil is there about it? And I'm talking not just on the conservative side, but on the controlled media.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, these people are made into heroes.
Yeah.
I mean, what exactly is so courageous about being transgender? If you're transgender, you're transgender. Courageous is what Mr. Penny did.
Yeah.
That's you put your life at risk and save somebody's life.
Well,
now, one of these people want to go ahead and save somebody's life. I'll say they're courageous, but they have a sex change operation and that makes them courageous.
That's Mayor. You bring up such a very good point, and I have a question, and this is both for you, Mayor, and Andrew. Why do you think it is that this movement's and this group of individuals? Why do you think it's being pushed on the rest of us so much, right? And you've brought up the fact that why this group? It's not like we're all out there saying bad things about these people, right? Why do you think they're pushing this specific group on the rest of the population? And maybe there's no answer.
I think it's because it's so destructive to the nuclear family, right? Look, I understand that there certainly are people that I think biologically are, gay. I think that's, and it's one of the things where I've got some friends that are, and I support their right to have equal rights under law.
Of course,
as those who are straight.
I think we've passed
right?
that, right?
And we've gotten to the point. Look, I think you're very proud of the fact, not to say pride and proud here, ironically, but I think you're very proud of the fact that you were one of the first political figures in the country to go out there and push for equal rights under law, whether you were gay, whether you were straight.
Right, absolutely.
But when you think about how in so many of these blue states now, including New York, they're introducing legislation. In some places, legislation has passed where they don't have to inform parents. And I think about this having an 18-month-old daughter. They don't have to inform parents if they want gender mutilation surgery. Now, I've seen it called gender affirmation. I've seen it called gender affirmation, even in places like the Post, which generally is pretty good. We need to be very careful with our words. This is not gender affirmation surgery. This is gender mutilation. When you take a 10, 11, or 12-year-old and you put something in their body, you alter their body where they cannot reproduce in the future.
Right.
I'm sorry. That's child abuse. That's what that is. And you're making a decision for them when their brain does not have the capacity to do that they'll regret. 80% of kids that have gone through this transition process regret it by the time they're 25 years old. 80%.
Wow.
So, Andrew, it's funny you said that. Dan Crenshaw just had a bunch of trans activists, Mayor, come to the Capitol Hill. Dan Crenshaw really literally said, show me a study where you think children benefit from this surgery. And the lady literally just put words together, and he just basically shut her down and said, thank you. You proved my point.
Basically children, you don't need studies.
Correct. That's what they said. The woman said you don't need studies. That's right. That's right.
So let me pose the same question to you then that Ted just asked. Why do you think this is so in our face everywhere, ubiquitous, if you will?
Yeah. I think it's all tied together with just let's pick something. Soros getting all those DAs to let all the criminals go free, so we have chaos in our democratic cities.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're trying to overthrow our government, and this is a way to overthrow the government. They're following the Marx, Mao, Saul Alinsky playbook. You destroy, exactly right, the nuclear family. I mean, first of all, you get God out. Well, they did that a while ago, right? I mean, look at you can't say God in school or you get shot. And You can't have a Christmas scene in the town square, and God is gone, right? But no God in government. Oh boy. The next one is the nuclear family. Well, look at all what they've done in public school. And McAuliffe sort of, I think, during the time you were running, that happened, and you really took up the issue very, very well and quickly. But McAuliffe announced in the middle of that race, and I think lost it for him, that parents should have nothing to say about the education of their kids. I mean, they're not educators. What should they have to say about the education of their children? So now you want to translate that around just a little bit. That's the whole idea of the state taking control of your child at the earliest possible age and teaching them what they want them to know, which now, what is that? That's propaganda.
Yeah.
And that was the aim of Marx, Stalin, Hitler. Get those kids at 2 years old and start brainwashing them, because what they provide for you, as far as socialism and communism is concerned, defies common sense. People are going to rebel against it unless you brainwash them. And this is all part of the movement to turn us to being a communist country. And I think it began with, I think the corruption began with Clinton, and the communist propaganda began with Obama. And this is a country without morals.
Yeah.
A country without any sexual morals, any kind of morals. And do everything you can to destroy our children, which is what, can you imagine some kid watching this? I mean, what kind of thing, for kids, these things are big things in their memories. What kind of damage does it? We don't even know.
Well, I actually think DeSantis made a good point today. DeSantis was on the campaign trail, and he said, this is exactly the kind of things that they want in our curriculum. This is why we address this in Florida. And I think it's a really good point. When you think about the fact that in schools, you're probably more likely now to actually have a drag queen come in and perform for you than you would be in a public school, at least, to say a prayer or a pledge of allegiance.
I wish the parent of one of the kids there would go to the DC police and sue out a complaint against Biden for child abuse for letting that happen. Suppose
I would assume the parents that he brought will say nothing to.
No, they're going to give him campaign contributions.
Yeah, exactly.
But just think if you did it in your house, right? You had a party, you invited a whole bunch of people, and you brought in a couple of drag queens, and the men who are women showed off their fake breasts to 5-year-olds, and the men showed off the whatever. One of those parents will get you arrested for child abuse.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
So why doesn't it bite? Well, of course, there's so many other things to arrest him for. This would be like way down on the list.
To be fair, we should add to the story that these individuals have been banned from the White House.
Right.
They have now been banned by the White House?
You got to throw that in there.
Yeah, that woman Rose, she was actually banned from any further White House, like after the fact.
Yeah, of course.
Obviously,
she
not
was
before.
invited to the event.
Yeah, she's an influencer on TikTok, Mayor. That's how she got there.
I tell you, thinking about this and thinking the 4 years I worked in the White House, I can only imagine now what the Secret Service must have been thinking when they saw this, because that's obviously a violation of what's going on White House grounds there. But they know that if they intervene there, and if they get caught by the press, that could be their job or career when you think about this administration here. So I can only imagine what the commanding officer on duty actually was thinking when he got that call from whoever the Secret Service agent saw that, saying, we have somebody who is actually stripping on the lawn. I can't imagine. But that's the situation they're put in.
You think of the Secret Service agents are kind of regular. The head must be spinning like crazy. Can you imagine?
I can't imagine.
I always wondered that.
The president has just had a very, very warm embrace with this woman. She's about 10 feet away from her. She's taking a blouse off. What do you mean she's taking them off? Well, she actually doesn't have a blouse on. She's just had her hands over her nipples, and she's now exposing her nipples. What?
I'm sure most Secret Service
Get
guys.
the kids out of there! Get the kids out of there!
Most Secret Service guys are probably conservative Republicans, so I can only imagine.
Well, how about their normal, non-perverted?
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, so, like, what goes through their head when they see like a bunch of drag
Pervert
queens
show.
and this and that?
The pervert show at
Like,
the White House.
Yeah, it's like night and day from President Trump's era. It's
Now,
like
I don't
insane.
know.
Yeah.
I don't know why I'm so surprised, because one of the people who went through the hard drive with me told me just a little while ago, I shouldn't have been surprised by this. All you have to do is look at Hunter's hard drive, and it's like a pervert show per page. So this is the family likes this. This is the family. This is our first family. So, now we have the second case against Trump, and my former assistant Andrew McCarthy has a very nice article in the Post today, in which he says that there's a question now that he's constantly always asking every day, what about? So he says Trump is indicted for misplacing and these documents that were classified. Now, none of them were seen by an enemy. None of them were put in jeopardy of being seen by an enemy, and he didn't destroy any of them. So then McCarthy says, what about Hillary Clinton? She actually destroyed them. Isn't that worse?
Right.
What about Biden? He put them in Chinatown. He might as well send them to Beijing. He put them in Chinatown and in 2 institutes run by the Chinese. What about Biden? I don't know how you pass that test of you can indict Trump for things that these people do that are much worse.
Well, and also one of the things he talked about in this article was about how the media is calling it now whataboutism,
Right.
where, well, you know, you can't look at Trump's situation and then relate it to Biden's situation, because it's 2 very different situations. I would say Biden's situation is far more grave. And I like to think about this, right? I think this is something that's very important to understand. You've highlighted this time and time again, but it's just so important to really understand in all this. President of the United States, or even the Vice President of the United States, you get classified material that comes to your office, right? So it gets brought in. You can see how potentially, as President or as Vice President of the United States, how classified material would get in with other material, right? It's possible that that would happen.
Sure.
Is it sloppy? Absolutely. Do I think that Joe Biden had motives in collecting that material? I absolutely do think, but there is certainly a defense that that material get mixed in. What I can't understand at all, unless you're trying to literally take papers out of a SCIF, a special room, how the classified information when Joe Biden was senator actually was able to get into his records, because documents, those documents
100% right.
do not get delivered to a Senate office or a congressional
You got to
office.
go out of your way to go look
You
at it.
have to. You go into a separate room. You go into a SCIF and you leave the documents in the SCIF. You had to do it as Associate Attorney General. You didn't have documents delivered to you. You had to go to a special room. The documents in there.
No, I had to do it.
You leave your phone outside.
When I was
You leave your
representing Trump,
material.
I just had to do it on a representative.
Yeah.
Do you remember when the report came out, the big long Mueller report? They made it available to us 3 days before, but we had to go read it in the SCIF. We were there all together about 18 hours on and off, not allowed to have food, not allowed to have water, not allowed to come out unless you have to
No
go to the
food or
bathroom.
water.
Yeah. And you're not allowed to take notes.
I wonder if our friend Rose went to the SCIF maybe
Yeah.
before or after. Maybe. Jeez.
But I mean, but the fact is that this has to weigh on people, on Americans, in terms of fairness. I know they hear the word indictment, but then they hear these things that Biden did and nothing is done to them. And most of it, I think, is getting through now. Maybe it's not getting through the way it should, but I think most Americans know about the fact that he had documents that were misplaced, the fact that he sent them to Chinatown, as well as the whole situation with the bribery. And I can't imagine that people aren't saying, well, what about Biden in a harmful way to him?
Yeah. Comer came out today and said the number is somewhere between 20 to 30 million that the Bidens received directly from China. 20 to 30. Personal, in personal accounts, not
China or Ukraine.
Maybe it was Ukraine. I apologize. In Ukraine, but in personal accounts, not in business accounts, in personal accounts. So not as a funding source where you would get a commission of that potentially, but directly into personal accounts.
Well, that completely squares with what I know, which got as far as proof that they received $2 million a year, proof that they got a money laundering payment of about 1.3 million. And then testimony from a Ukrainian prosecutor who said that money was paid to them in offshore bank accounts. And then a woman was available who was going to give all of the bank accounts. And the FBI never interviewed her, even though she was under threat of being killed. Her husband probably had been killed because he was a part owner of the company. And when Zlochevsky went back to his business after having worked for the government for 7 years, all of a sudden, within months, this guy ran his car into a tree. And Zlochevsky then took over all of the business. So he went from being worth 20 million to being worth 40 billion, just based on the guy, his name was Lisan, driving drunk. And the prosecutors believe that they sent him out. They took him out to dinner for about 5 nights in a row, and every night they let him go home drunk, just figuring that one time he'd go off a cliff. And finally he did, and they whacked up all his money. His widow is willing to testify against Biden, against Zlochevsky. She was the accountant for the company. She says, I can't tell you it's the truth in it. I can just tell you it's testimony. She says, I can name every offshore account because I was in charge of distributing it, not just for the Bidens, who got a lot more money than what we originally thought, 8 million, but all the other politicians who got money. So I think that's probably what Comer has got his hands on.
Right.
Both Zlochevsky's tape, and then you get those offshore accounts. There are a couple more that are going to go down. I think a couple more politicians that are going to go down because the Ukraine wasn't just paying the Bidens; they were paying lots of people.
How do you? This is very top level in terms of what's the plan. But let's say Trump gets reelected or elected, I should say, in 24, January 20th. 2025, what do you do with the FBI? What do you do with the DOJ? What do you do with our intelligence agencies? What does that plan look like?
Yeah, I think you appoint a person with very, very significant law enforcement experience, preferably not from the FBI, to take over the FBI. You get rid of everyone at headquarters, everyone, even if they if you can't fire them for misconduct, move them to Alaska, and don't send any cases to Alaska for a while. And we would call it freeze them out.
Freeze them out.
Literally.
Yeah, and then reform the FBI. Then do an investigation of all the offices, make sure it didn't infect them. Set up a new set of rules so there's no contact except at the highest levels between the FBI and the White House. At the same time, you got to straighten out the Justice Department. After all, the Justice Department theoretically is in charge of the FBI. They never have been, but they theoretically are in charge. So you could fix them. The FBI Justice Department needs what Gerald Ford did after Watergate. They needed an attorney general who is from out of politics, is willing to change the whole operation, get rid of a lot of career people, because a lot of these career people are the anti-Trumpers, the deranged anti-Trumpers that will do anything, including violate the law to get rid of them. I mean, you just got to get rid of a lot of people. Thousands of people have to be moved out.
Would you move the DOJ out of Washington, D.C.? I mean, Washington, D.C. is such a political bubble.
Interesting.
Obviously. But I mean, I think people don't even really understand, right? From a social standpoint. It's one of the things, my 4 years in Washington, I loved the job. I couldn't stand the city. And part of it was anytime you were socializing, right, it was always about politics. It was
100%.
everything was politics. Everything was your proximity to power, and it affects so many people. People, you get it's a high. It's a high that you have being there and that involved, and that I think that's certainly transpired in our DOJ and in our FBI now. And I just wonder if maybe DC is at the right place for it. What are the pros and cons to moving it out?
Well, first of all, there is a plan to move the FBI out and build a building for them. And now there's been a holdup because nobody wants to reward the FBI with a beautiful new building.
Mm-hmm.
But if the idea of it is to get them the hell out of Washington because it's harder to be corrupted outside of Washington, you're at least a little removed. I would say that had a lot of merit.
You don't have to socialize
Now,
with
FBI,
the politician. You don't have to, you're not going, your kids are not going to the same schools together, right? If you're going to be tough on those people, so it's a little bit tougher if you're going to the school play and you see the guy you may be prosecuted.
Also,
for some people.
The idea that you can walk back and forth from the FBI to the White House, from the Justice Department to the White House, creates a proximity that's hard to, although I have to say for the longest time after Watergate, they did maintain that. I think it got broken down somewhat with Bill Clinton, like everything else got broken down with Bill Clinton. But I think the real destruction that took place was Obama and Holder. I think Holder was the AG that really turned it into basically Obama's secret police, going after the conservatives. Moving the Justice Department out, I think it has merit. I mean, to move out the agencies that should be treated as independent or mostly independent. I mean, for policy reasons, the Justice Department isn't, like antitrust policy and other things, but on criminal matters, it should be independent. And we used to have a rule, because it was right after Watergate, that the Justice Department could not be in contact with the White House. It only could go through the Attorney General, the Deputy Attorney General, or the Associate Attorney General, so that all contacts were recorded and memorialized.
So when you were Associate Attorney General, who would you contact in the White House?
The White House counsel.
White House counsel.
I'd have to counsel. And then if it was going to be a policy matter, we would then set up a liaison.
Okay.
We'd say, okay, these two people and these two people can work together. They're working on
war
a bill.
on drugs, right?
They're working on a bill, or the war on drugs is a perfect
Right.
example.
Yeah.
We had a whole liaison for that, but not on a case.
Right.
If there was any question about a case, that question had to come to the top 3 officials in the Justice Department, and then they would decide whether it can or cannot be answered. You'd be fired at the White House if you called up a line assistant and said, hey, can you tell me about the Biden case? Or can you tell me about the just out completely?
Out.
So, I mean, things like that are going to have to be done to once again remind everybody that these are independent agencies, that the power to prosecute in a governmental laws cannot be political. The minute it does, we become a fascist country.
Yeah.
And nobody's done more damage than Biden has done. But I do believe it began with Obama and Holder. They began the bastardizing of the Justice Department. Boy, they've ruined it. I even think you might have to change the name of the FBI. I think the name is taken on an odious connotation for many, many people.
The brand, you're absolutely right. The brand has, look, you used to really have trust in the FBI.
Yeah.
You used to really believe that the FBI were crusaders for righteousness. And now, sadly, it's a political organization.
We can only say so often that most of them are honest.
Yeah.
But their organization is ruining this country. I mean, they've rendered this country a banana republic.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you can't, how long do you let that go on? And then you also have to be careful that we, meaning Republicans, don't get it in our heads. Oh, gee, let's leave it that way so we can use it that way.
Yeah.
I mean, that sure as hell has happened a lot in history.
You're right.
That, you want to do it to us, we'll do it to you. I think that happened with the nomination of Supreme Court justices, which used to be a sensible thing. I think once they did that to, I think Bork, I think once they did it to Bork,
Right.
it became
This is part of
we're
part
gonna,
of the
we're
plan.
going to
We're
get
doing-
you. You're going to get us. We're
Right.
going to get you. We're
Yeah.
going to get us.
Well, but part of the thing is, and Democrats, it seems like certainly in Congress, have felt that they can skate by because they have the media on their side. But if they feel there are no repercussions for all this, right? You look at Schiff. Schiff was not censured today. Schiff basically he's not going to be on the hook for any of his lies for basically trying to take down a president of the United States, a sitting president of the United States. You wonder though if that's not the case, and I understand why you're saying you don't want that tick for tack. But then, how are these people that I think may have potentially committed high crimes? How are they going to be held responsible?
They have to be.
How?
Well, you have to prosecute them, but you have to make a distinction between. I mean, you can't prosecute 1,000 people.
Mm-hmm.
The really serious crimes. Now, what the Bidens did, can't. This is double negative, but it has to be prosecuted.
Yeah.
You can't, for the good of the country, you can't let that go.
Mm-hmm.
You can't let a president, vice president, and senator spend his entire career amassing maybe $100 million by selling his public office.
Yeah.
Without very serious consequences. Mm-hmm. That's why I think the racketeering statute should be applied.
Right.
They should go to jail for long periods of time, but all their money should be taken away. Yeah. Their home should be taken away. Their money should be taken away. Should be taken back. That money belongs to the government, not to them. Mm-hmm. And I think that would sure as hell give somebody second thoughts about doing it.
Right.
I mean, the real purpose of the RICO statute is to bankrupt and crush the illegal business, not just to put them in jail. Every bit of that money, if you prove a RICO case against Biden and Hunter, you can take all their money, you can take all those homes away. Mm-hmm. That should be done. And the family should be rendered, at least all those who participated, completely bankrupt. After all, that's what they're trying to do to Trump and everybody around him.
That's absolutely what they're trying to do.
Well, they should get some of their own medicine.
Sounds like you practiced a little whataboutism right there, yeah. Which is amazing to me because you think about it, right? In the history of law, isn't that kind of what law is? You set precedent,
100%.
Right? And so to me, 100%. As somebody who is an amateur lawyer, if you will, not like a professional lawyer.
You compare cases, yeah. I mean, that's what a Supreme Court precedent's all about. That's what Roe v. Wade was, and then the
whataboutism or precedent.
That's right. Well, how about we take our break and hear from our sponsor, Kirk Elliott, PhD. And then right after the break, we've got Kirk on the line.
Good.
For our Thursday. We have to come up with a theme for this segment.
A Thursday lecture on the economy.
That's what we'll call it.
There we go. So Thursday lecture on the economy.
We'll be back in
because it really is good.
90 seconds. So please listen carefully to this very important message from Kirk Elliott, double PhD.
Faith and family, freedom and finance. 4 things that we would do anything to protect. I trust the team at Kirk Elliott, PhD, Private Advisors, with providing the advice and sound strategies to take advantage of the inflationary pressures, the high interest rates, and the international challenges we face today. The Kirk Elliott team, with over 29 years of experience, shares our values and believes in people over profit. They can help you protect your finances from the big government policies that are out of our control. So what's in our control? The decision to act or not to act is within our control. I encourage you to act. Call Kirk Elliott, PhD, Private Advisors today. Start working with a team that will help you protect your retirement assets with gold and silver while sharing your desire to protect your faith, family, and freedom. Call them today, 720-605-3900. That's 720-605-3900, and tell them Rudy sent you. Or simply fill out a request for a free consultation at kirkelliottphd.com/Rudy.
Okay, we are back. Ted, are we hearing from Kirk Elliott? Is that right?
Are you there?
You should have Kirk. Let me know if you can hear him.
I can't hear him right now.
Not yet.
Kirk, give us 2 seconds.
Kirk?
Yes. Hey, Mayor.
There he
There
is.
he is.
Kirk, this is my son Andrew is with me. We're having a holiday, a Father's Day special.
Well, that's awesome. Love that.
Isn't that great?
Thank you, Kirk. Nice to meet you.
I love it.
So,
Well,
Kirk,
nice to meet you.
what do you have for us this week that people should be thinking about in order to protect themselves as things seem to get darker and darker in Washington?
Well, they are getting darker. And Mayor, over the last few weeks, we've talked about the debt ceiling, where they took the ceiling out of the negotiations, right? And we're going to have massive inflation. We've been talking about central banks, digital currency. We've talked about the Bank of International Settlements and how they're really kind of intruding on everybody's aspects of life. They want real-time transactions, real-time data, so they can see if what you're spending your money on, right? They want to be able to stop you from buying or selling if they don't match up to their ideology, right? It's okay, this is insane. But really, the battle is kind of bigger. If I were to put it under a big umbrella right now, I would say it's like this fairy tale, the story of Humpty Dumpty, for example. So everybody kind of knows that dumb story or poem or whatever it is. Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall, Humpty Dumpty had a great fall, and then all the king's horses and all the king's men couldn't put them together again, right? So this is where we are as I look at it with our economy right now. The Humpty Dumpty is the debt. It's got this egg and it's fractured. They're not going to put it together again, but it's not that they can't, they won't. So I think that the powers that be, which are in the financial world, the World Economic Forum, the World Bank, the IMF, the Bank of International Settlements, the Federal Reserve, they have a choice. And the choice is, are they going to save the dollar or are they going to save the system? And you can't do both at the same time. And here's the reason why. The US dollar is the world's reserve currency, which means all oil settlements, all international transactions are traded in the US dollar. But they want to change that. The BRICS nations are wanting to take that over. So they've already shown what is going on, right? They already have shown their cards and what comes next. So therefore, they don't want to save the dollar. They want to bring in a new system with a new reserve currency, with a new digital banking system.
Oh, no.
And so they're going to let the US dollar die. And that's where I think that we're
How likely do you think that is, Kirk? I mean, is if we can change this administration in a year and a half, can we stop that?
I don't think you can stop it directly, but I think you can turn it around once it gets there. I think they're way too far down the runway that plane has to take off.
Oh, my goodness.
But then it's going to take a strong captain to turn the plane around, right? Because here's where things are already starting to fracture in their world. So just 2 days ago, I was reading some research, and so we've got central bank digital currency. We will have it, Mayor, 100% we're going to have it, and people aren't going to like it, right? But here's where I want to encourage people to not listen to what they say, the other countries and other central banks, but watch what they do, because it tells a completely different story. So other countries and central banks and the bankers around the world say, oh, they poo-poo gold and silver, and say it's an ancient relic. Why would you ever want it? But yet, the chart I just saw a couple mornings ago, Russia, since the year 2010, the last 13 years, has amassed 1,600 tons of gold, not ounces, not pounds, tons. China, 1,000 tons of gold. And then Turkey, 450 tons of gold. Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, India, over 200 tons of gold each. So I'm looking at this list, and it's like, man, those are all BRICS nations. Those, and where's the Western economies? And I have to start thinking, where's America on that list? Where's Canada? Where's the United Kingdom? Where's Germany? They're not on the list, Mayor. They're not amassing gold. So here's where I think their pride has gotten so big, where they think, no, there is no plan B. It's central bank digital currency or bust, right? Where the BRICS nations are thinking, wait a second, we want to be the world's reserve currency. We're going to make sure that we get to that point and replace the US dollar, which is why I think the US dollar is going to die in the short term. Because what that tells us is one of two things, and we don't know. One of two things. Number one, they're dangling this carrot of gold out there and showing the world it's like, hey, we've got this central bank digital currency, but it's going to be backed by gold. You want what we have. But it's like this vice grip. Once you go into that system, you're not getting out because they control the purse strings. Option B is maybe they're seeing fractures in the system already. And they know that people aren't going to like central bank digital currency. So they're backing up their collective currencies with gold as a backstop. Either way, they know that the world likes something tangible and that's real. So just last weekend, Mayor, there was a poll in the United States that said, how many of you Americans trust a Federal Reserve that issues a digital currency? 2-1 in favor of not. And then we have states that are now starting to show their muscle, right? You've got Arkansas that says they're going to have gold as legal tender. Wyoming, Oklahoma, Utah already do.
That's very interesting.
It is.
I was going to ask you, Kirk, I was going to ask you, has the United States increased gold, silver, generally for the country? I assume the answer is no.
I'm assuming the answer is no as well. However, the Federal Reserve can't be audited, right? So this is what a lot of congressmen and women are trying to get done, is audit the Federal Reserve, see how much they have. You know, you can't go into Fort Knox and see if anything is still there. But last I've seen, we've had about 8,500 tons of gold, metric tons of gold forever. I don't think that's really changed. And the fact that we're not net buyers of gold tells me that that number has probably not changed.
Right.
But here's what's interesting. Even Ron DeSantis said, Florida, we're not going to accept CBDCs. He passed that legislation just a few days ago. So it's like, wow. Now you've got states that are saying that we're not going to accept this horrible, evil system, right? So maybe the BRICS nations are saying, maybe we're going to have a currency that's backed by gold. But I think we're going to have to go through some dark times. We will have central bank digital currency. The dollar will die as we know it, but I think it could be replaced with something even stronger, and that's a gold-backed currency over time.
Now, once again, let's convert this into what our listeners and their friends have to do to protect themselves, Kirk.
Well, this is why I said, don't listen to what they say, watch what they do, right? So when central banks around the world are amassing gold by the thousands of tons and hundreds of tons, maybe we should take notice and do the same thing as individuals, right? So start acquiring, allocating into physical, tangible assets like the big central bankers are. They might be evil, but they're not stupid, right? They want to protect and preserve their capital. There's a difference between evil and stupid.
There sure is. We know enough people in that category, don't we? Wow.
Word, we sure do.
So now let's give them how to get you, how to get to you.
Yeah, so simply just call our office, 720-605-3900, or you can go to kirkelliottphd.com/Rudy, because if you want to do the same thing that the big central banks are doing and protecting and preserving and looking to the future with something that's safe, we're not going to do it in the thousands of tons or hundreds of tons or even 1 ton, but we can start allocating 1 ounce at a time and protect and preserve everything we've worked our whole life to accumulate. We can help you do that.
Well, I'm going to urge people to do that, Kirk, and you have a good weekend and a good week, and we'll be back together next week, okay?
Sounds good. Happy Father's Day.
Same to you.
Same to you, Kirk.
All right. See you, Andrew. Bye-bye.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, take advantage of that, because you can make that call and the call costs you nothing. You make the call, talk to them about your situation so they can at 720-605. Is that 3,500?
3,900.
3,900.
720-605-3900.
And that's /Rudy when you do it on KirkElliottPhD.com.
What a great message. What a great message. And we love hearing.
Well, it makes all the sense in the world. If the banks are doing it, you might as well do it.
Fascinating hearing how Russia and China are accumulating gold too. That's fascinating.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. I did not know that.
And at least do some allocation so you protect yourself. You don't have to do it all, but do a lot of it. So just getting back to what we were talking about, the other point I wanted to make was how unfair the magistrate was to Trump, saying that he can't talk to the witnesses in his case when some of those witnesses in his case work for him and they're working as presidential.
Walt is a perfect example. So Walt Nauta, who is his, you could say, body man, aide, whatever you want to call him, when he was indicted, he was on the golf course actually with us. Because I was with the president on Friday. We actually had the opportunity to play a round of golf together, and Walt was there, and Walt had to immediately be removed, left, because of that.
I mean, if they if they don't have the evidence now, first of all, they should be able to talk to each other because they should be able to prepare a defense. You're allowed to prepare a common defense, and it always seemed to me extremely unfair that defendants couldn't talk to each other, but the government could.
Yeah,
I mean, they look. You've got to take the risk that anybody can lie. The government can lie. They can lie. That's what you have cross-examination for. But the mere fact that some people might lie shouldn't stop other people who aren't from being able to prepare a decent defense.
Wouldn't it prevent you from actually being able to defend yourself to the best of your legal team's ability?
Think about their situation, right? Walt probably has a lot more detailed information than the president does because Walt was carrying out the details.
Right.
So for the president to refresh his recollection about things, that's what I would do if I had to refresh my recollection about something when I was mayor or when I was representing the president. I've got to go back to my assistants.
Right. Look at their records.
I don't want to lie. In fact, I go back because I want to tell the truth. Did we? And sometimes they'll remember things because they're into it in more detail than I am, than I will.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, so the way you test that is with cross-examination. That's our test of truth, not censoring people. And luckily, he didn't put on. They were worried that they may stop him from going from state to state or campaigning because it might prejudice the jury, and the government wasn't stupid enough to ask for that. So, and I don't think the judge that he has will impose ridiculous injunctions like that on him. So
I just have talked to so many Americans over the last few days that are just so disgusted and sick and tired with what we are seeing with the fact that you have from district attorneys all the way up to the attorney general and the special prosecutor that are so obviously politically, vindictively going after people, including the former president being the prime example of a different political party. It's and honestly, it's a little bit of, I don't want to say hopeless, but this feeling of when is this going to end? How is it going to end? And I think that's why so many people have their sights set in the next 17 months. And because I think a lot of people feel like this is the last stand for our country.
So, Andrew, does it help or hurt Trump? So far, it's helped.
He owns the news cycle.
Will the second one help? And then does there come a point if they keep doing it? Because, I mean, it seems to me they're prepared to indict him over January 6th, same prosecutor, and then Georgia, some ridiculous indictment over the telephone call. So do you think they're going to just continue to do this?
Well, I think they've made the determination that they want to run against Trump. I think that they think that that he, and I don't know if this is, I think that they realize that he has not solved some of the issues in the problem states. And that might not just be him, but I think some other candidates probably haven't. But when you look at what's happened in Arizona, the person who ran the campaign there is now the governor. You look what happened in Pennsylvania. The person who ran the campaign there is now the governor. We saw how Republicans lost the Supreme Court in Wisconsin. Those are three very problem states which have probably gotten worse, if not better. Maybe the legislature's gotten better in Wisconsin. But aside from, the laws in Georgia, which have gotten better, and we certainly know that the governor there is no fan of Trump.
That's
and
true.
Raffensperger is still in there.
That's true.
But even with that, Georgia's probably gotten slightly better. Other than that, these problem states have not gotten better. So I think what they've said is, look, we ran a playbook in 2020. We'll take our chances if we can run against the same candidate, we'll run against the same candidate and we'll run the same plays. And they'll probably throw in a couple plays, a couple tricks, which we haven't seen, which they haven't shown yet. And I think their determination is Trump as the nominee will own the news cycle. So we're going to let him own the news cycle with as many indictments as possible, because we've only been talking about Trump the last few days. And they'll take their chances with him. I think that's what they've chosen. I mean, not that I'm privy to many of those Democratic meetings, but.
And the Durham report kind of helps that, because the Durham report reminds me on a large scale of what Comey did. The Durham report points out all these crimes, basically very modest language, but these were terrible crimes. Like they meet in the White House and Brennan tells Obama and Biden that Hillary is concocting a plan to falsely charge Trump with Russian collusion so she can cover up her destroyed emails. I mean, a president hears that, you send the FBI out to arrest him.
Amazing.
So he knew. Obama all throughout these years has known that this is a completely phony exercise. Now, and lots of other things, lots of lies and perjury, money paid. Nobody gets arrested. Nobody gets indicted. There's no reason for them to say, right now, everything's in place for us to get away with the same thing we did. If we have another hard drive kind of situation,
Right,
they'll bury it for us. If we have to fool around in a couple of states, they'll protect us.
Yeah.
I think that is a real danger. That and I think they think that's only true of Trump, but they could probably do it to any of the Republicans. Immediately. In fact, I'm sure they have a plan for DeSantis already. I mean, remember the people who pulled off the Russian collusion, the Steele dossier. Originally, they were going to go after a different Republican candidate. And I think probably, don't know if it was Rubio or Cruz.
Jeb. Oh, it was after Jeb.
No, I don't think it was Jeb. I think they thought it was going to be Rubio or Cruz.
As crazy as it sounds, I was hearing that Jeb, Rubio, and actually, remember this name, Scott Walker. Early on in 2016, I was hearing the Democrats, Mayor, were concerned about Jeb early on, Rubio, and Scott Walker, of all people. Remember that guy?
Yeah, the Democrats thought that Jeb was the weakest candidate.
They wanted him.
Before Trump came along.
Right.
And then they were pretty sure that Trump was the weakest candidate.
Yes. For a while, they wanted him. And then when they stopped having him on TV when they realized, this guy's the real deal.
Yeah. Remember
how MSNBC, CNN, Morning Joe, he was yucking it up with Morning Joe every other day for an hour.
Right.
And Mayor, you remember when that came to an end when they realized this guy's for real.
Absolutely.
Mayor and Andrew, switching gears real quick. Andrew, you were just in DC. What do you think about the House Republicans rejecting to censure Adam Schiff? What was up with that? I don't understand.
I think it's probably I obviously think this guy should. I don't know if there are potential criminal charges that you could face him, but I know that on the House floor, elected members of Congress have a certain amount of immunity, if I'm not mistaken, right? So we can go and lie basically on the House floor.
Right.
You have a certain amount of immunity. I think that, and there were two New York members of Congress, Mark Molinaro and Mike Lawler, who voted against censuring Schiff. I think they probably were concerned of precedent, right? You think if we end up doing this to Schiff, then you'll do it to a Republican and you'll have this back and forth. And I think that's probably why they didn't. But I'm so frustrated that Schiff is not being held accountable.
He went beyond the line. Look at all the Democrats and how terrible they were.
Right.
Nadler was pretty damn bad, and he lied a lot, and others. He was way beyond.
It was almost like part of the framing, if you will.
Yeah. He was
between
beyond
what he was doing with the media, trying to basically say that they had this evidence on Trump. That he had seen this when he hadn't at all. I mean, completely lied to the American people.
Lied about the whistleblower.
Right. So safe to say both of you would vote to censor.
Yeah, I do think you could distinguish, and just so you didn't set a precedent that you could say, look, we got about 20 of them we could do it with that lied at one time or another.
I think the thing though that I've learned from the last,
we're going to pick the one who went over the top.
so what I would say is if they haven't just indicted a former sitting president of the United States recently, then I would worry more about the precedent. But the truth is, they have been breaking precedent over the last 5 years, 6 years, as we've seen with all of these cases, with what they've done with going after the president's lawyer, with actually going after his iCloud account when he was named lawyer, which they did to you the day after you had been announced as the president's lawyer. So I'm not. I look at it as I think they would break this precedent, and so I'd want to hold this guy accountable for it.
Yeah, I think some people have to be held accountable so it doesn't happen again.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the only thing that really works is imprisonment to stop real corruption.
Mm-hmm.
It's the only thing that works. If these people have it in their head that they can get away with it again, there's so much at stake, they'll do it again.
Mm-hmm.
And they probably have gotten better at it.
Yeah.
I mean, they're fabulous at cheating.
Question for you both. Who, in your experience, who in Congress do you consider or admire as a fighter, as somebody that maybe our listeners and viewers can look to help effectuate what we're talking about tonight?
Who would you like to pick?
Well, I can think of somebody in our own backyard, our own state, Elise Stefanik. I think she's a real fighter. I think she's somebody who's gone out there and fought.
And she went far fast.
Absolutely.
Woo.
Absolutely. I mean, look, you dealt with her a lot.
Legitimately.
You dealt with her a lot on the impeachment hearings and everything. And you understand how effective she's been. And then obviously, look, you see what Comer's doing. I think he's doing the right things. Jim Jordan is certainly a guy who's out there doing the right things, but somebody who's not maybe, she's in the media a lot, but maybe not as often as Comer and Jim Jordan has been, which has been every single day. It's probably Elise Stefanik.
I think Comer's handled himself really well.
Yeah, I
For
agree.
a guy, I mean, Jordan has been, terrific all throughout, but Jordan has a lot of experience now. Comer, this was all new starting January.
Yeah.
And he's doing a good job.
Mm-hmm.
He's handling it really, really well. And they're going after him.
Absolutely.
I don't bother to read all this stuff, but the things they write about him, he almost sounds as bad as me.
Yeah. Almost.
Comment below. Let us know who else you consider a fighter in Congress.
I like Senator Johnson. Senator Johnson. I have
Yeah.
tremendous respect for Senator Johnson.
That's right. That's right. The mayor, of course, Senator Johnson and his office spent some time with you on 2020, and he was willing to talk about a lot of the concerns. And again, these are sworn, I don't know if they were affidavits, but these are sworn documents, right, that thousands and thousands of voters brought forward across the country.
Well, that's what Ron was affected by.
And he was
also Senator. You can't. I mean, Senator Grassley is an institution, and he represents what you would think a senior senator would be like. And it's amazing because he has that sort of little bit of a strange way of speaking. He seems so shocked that this is going on.
Right.
It's almost like
Yeah.
It's almost like your local priest or minister,
Wisconsin,
or rabbi,
Yeah.
has to face this. It's like when he says it, and there are, according to the report, there are tape recordings of the president taking a bribe.
Yeah.
Bribe.
Amazing.
Remember, he served in the Senate with Biden all those years, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, Biden's probably been in the Senate longer than him.
Yeah, you're probably right.
Biden got in when he was 30.
Yeah, 74,
75,
74, 76.
Right.
Just a long time.
Well, we have just a few minutes left.
76.
76
with Clinton.
With Carter.
With Carter, right.
Yes.
Right.
Just a few minutes left. How about we take one
That's
call?
Right. He's way before Clinton. My God.
Yeah.
It's hard to remember how long he's been there.
Because remember, he was head of the Judiciary Committee during the Clarence Thomas
and then
years, right?
Somebody the other day, one of the left-wing goons,
That's right.
he's always had a pristine reputation. From the very beginning, he had a reputation.
Plagiarism.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, but also his brothers being shady operators. From the very beginning, there were scandals about his brother James, his brother Frank, about his son getting a no-show job for the bank in Delaware, for him being the only Democrat who opposed the bankruptcy bill because the bankruptcy bill was favorable to poor people.
Oh.
and the banks were against it.
Mhm.
But his son had a no-show job for
Had a
the
bank.
M&A Bank.
Nah.
Well, Mayor, just a couple minutes left. I don't want to put Andrew on the spot
Please.
just quite yet. Let's
Okay.
take one call.
Okay.
Put him on the
And
spot.
after that call, we're going to close. We want to hear from Andrew just a few days before Father's Day. We
Ah.
want to hear from you. Maybe you want to
Good. You
give
give
us
me-
some
You
inside.
give me a minute to collect
information.
my thoughts. I like
Think of what you want to say. We're going to go to our friend Joe,
it. Okay.
and we'll take a call. And then Andrew, we're closing with you.
Okay.
Hey, Joe, how are you?
Hey, it's Joe from Brookhaven. How's Mr. Giuliani?
I'm great. I'm doing really well, Joe.
Well,
How are you?
Could be your son too, Mr. Giuliani, right? I call you Mr. Mayor and Mr. Giuliani, Andrew.
Oh, thank
What
you.
a great son. Andrew, I met you at Bellport Country Club one night.
Yeah, that's
I had the
right.
Second
Absolutely.
Amendment hat. Yeah, you said I like
Absolutely.
that hat, my Second Amendment hat. But you swung me because you got so much charisma, and I said, this guy's got the it factor. So I had voted for Zeldin 7 times. I jumped on board with you that night because you have got something, and I know where you get it from. You get it from your father. So happy
Well,
Father's
thanks,
Day
Joe.
to both of you. You definitely got the gift. And I said, and I swayed, and the lady sitting next to me says, he's got the it factor. I said, I was just thinking that. And I jumped on board, and you should have been the next governor. I hate to say it, because I had voted for Zeldin 7 times. I'm right. I live the next town over here.
Right.
I can go back. I know a lot of history there. But I'm
Well, Joe,
telling you,
I
you
appreciate
have what
that.
it takes.
Well-
You have such insight. And I just want to say, Mr. Mayor, I subscribe to that. What is it? The subscription. I implore anybody out there who's listening, subscribe. It's worth the $10 plus you're helping because you're going to do the right thing with the money. You're going to fight for the cause we're fighting for to get Trump over the finish line here. Between the Holy Spirit and the power of prayer, we have to do it. I got to see you up at Plymouth Rock, which was, and I was thinking the other day. When
Yeah,
I
wasn't
seen
that
you,
something?
that was good, beautiful. And you were like, this is where it all started, the democracy. And then I saw it the other night when he was being arrested and indicted. I said, my God, 250 years later, we went from that to, I happen to be a Mayflower descendant.
You are.
wow.
Isn't that amazing? It was amazing looking at that ship, too. You know, you have to do that, I think, sometimes, Joe, when your democracy is being challenged like this, just to remind yourself, you know, go to Gettysburg or Plymouth Rock or to Boston, or you go to New York and go down to the statue of George Washington, where he was sworn in as first president. People in New York can go to St. They can go to St. Paul's Chapel, where President Washington.
Mr. Mayor, I have the William Floyd Estate right here. When you guys come out for dinner one night, Andrew, you're invited. My wife's cooking. Everybody's coming. We're gonna look
Sounds
at.
good.
The
I'm getting hungry
papers
thinking
from
about it.
1941. And William Floyd Estate. Now they're redoing Fort St. George right on William Floyd Parkway. You got to come see it. That's where the Patriots took over the fort back from. I live 5 minutes from there. Back for the spy ring. They came from Connecticut and they took over the fort from the British right at Fort St. George, 5 minutes from the house. They redoing the whole thing. And right right near to William Floyd, the signer of the Declaration of Independence. There's so much history on Long Island.
Well, we'll come out and see you, Joe. Thanks for
and happy
calling.
Father's Day to you,
All
Joe.
right,
Happy
God
Father's
bless
Day
you
to the
guys.
whole family.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the compliments. Happy Father's Day.
You know, if you want to follow up on what Joe was saying, you should get you probably can get it on Netflix or one of those places. Turn is Turn is like a
very
5
good.
or 6.
I haven't seen the
season.
whole. I haven't seen the whole thing, but I watched the first season or season and a half.
Almost all of it takes place in Long Island, New York, Brooklyn.
Yeah.
How critical the Battle of Long Island, the Battle of Brooklyn was. Washington's brilliant strategy of escaping annihilation and the spies. Because really, it's about the network of spies that Washington set up to counteract the network of spies, which of course included Benedict Arnold, everyone knows, that the British set up. And no one ever really concentrates on how important they were, because the British had us surrounded and could have destroyed us in Brooklyn and Manhattan. And Washington instead went all the way up to where the George Washington Bridge is.
Crossed over the Palisades.
Crossed in a bad weather, having fake them out because he had these spots.
Mhm.
And if that hadn't happened, our Continental Army would have been gone.
Right.
It's amazing. Well, Andrew's up.
I'm up. Okay.
Well, Andrew, please tell us.
Well, I'll tell you, it's first and foremost, I can say it's Happy Father's Day. And man, what do
I should
what
say,
do-
I
what
should
do
say
even
thank you. I should say thank you to you, because there wouldn't be a Father's Day if I didn't have you first and then Carolina.
Well, so many incredible experiences together, so much that I've learned from you. But I think more than anything, it's courage, and you said that about your father, how he taught you courage, but I've seen everything that you've gone through over the last few years.
I watched you during the campaign, and it was a tough one, the first one. The whole party aligned against you, and you didn't miss a beat. I mean, you have it, Andrew.
Well, I appreciate
the gentleman
that.
is right.
Well, but today it's about you. I should say
That's
this weekend it's about
always
you.
about your
and
children.
and that's true. You know what? You're always
You have
trying
a
to impress
child.
your
You-
parents or your child.
You have your child.
You always are. But no, I just want to thank you for setting a great example of how to be a patriot at times when it feels like our country is not on the right path. You stepped up and you continue to do what is right when it would be easier to take other paths.
Well,
and
you've been with me every step of the way, Andrew. You know
Thank
that,
you.
right?
well,
And my good friends. You find out who your good friends are.
yeah.
It's
That's-
wonderful.
This is so good. I'm going to have you on my radio show this
Well,
Sunday.
this
You're going to come on
Sunday-
this Sunday.
This Sunday
On
is going
Father's
to be a big
Day.
Giuliani Day.
So come on.
10 to 11, Uncovering the Truth with Dr.
That's right.
Maria.
And then
and
2
2
o'clock,
2 to 3.
2 to 3. on
Andrew
WABC.
and his dad, and he'll be cross-examining me.
Yeah, and we're going to talk a little bit less current events and a little bit more
No, he's gonna get into-
about our family. We're going
Yep.
to talk a little bit about the commission case, about your time in Washington D.C. in the 70s and 80s. So I'm looking forward to it, and I know you're going to look forward to spending
He's
a
a
little
very-
time with Grace this
He's a
weekend as
very
well.
probing questioner. I think you'll
Most-
enjoy.
I'll tell you, I don't know if anybody has shown their socks on the show, but let me set precedent. We talked about precedent with this right here. Don't worry, I'm not going to take my shirt off where you have to see anything.
Oh, there's
But
Gracie.
there is Grace right there on my socks. So
Oh,
I
she's-
got this. I'll tell you a funny story about these socks.
She's
over
even
there.
adorable on the socks.
So my wife last year for Father's Day got me a pair of socks, and it was these socks that looked just like this. And I love them so much that I put them on about 15 minutes before my debates, and I take them off right after the debates. In the whole room, I take them right off because I didn't want to put them in the wash because I didn't want them to wear out. I didn't want my daughter's face to wear out. But, that's after a while, your stocks are going to really, really stink. And it's going to be a really tough way to win voters if your stocks stink as much as it does. So what she did on Christmas is she got me 8 pair. So now I can
good.
wear the socks without even worrying about it right there. But
Those
you're
could-
absolutely
those
right.
Could use a little washing.
They probably could.
Well, thank you
Happy
very, very
Father's Day.
much. Thank you, Andrew, for joining us. Thank you for Andrew should be. Gosh, I actually forgot that, Doctor. Andrew is a Happy Father's Day, Andrew. This is the second time I get to wish you that.
It is. It's the best title in the world, right?
Yeah,
Bet-
and I can see.
Better than anything.
It's very, very heartwarming for me to see you with her, and how normal and how loving and how, including with her mother too. But I mean, it's wonderful to see how the two of you are such great parents.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
it's
And you have a great kid. So
we do.
she's
Happiest moments in life.
We're all very prejudiced about our children and grandchildren, but it is true. Grace is totally exceptional.
Happy
Well-
Father's Day, Dad.
well,
and happy
thank-
Father's Day to all.
Yeah,
You
to
out there.
To everyone out there, we'll be back tomorrow night. And don't forget, on Sunday, 10 and 2 on WABCradio.com. And you can get it anywhere around the country and around the world. And you can get the app. And then you can listen to us all the time. Isn't that great? Thank you very much. And God bless America.
God bless America.
Our purpose to bring to bear the principle of common sense and rational discussion to the issues of our day. America was created at a time of great turmoil. tremendous disagreements, anger, hatred. There was a book written in 1776 that guided much of the discipline of thinking that brought to us the discovery of our freedoms, of our God-given freedoms. It was Thomas Paine's Common Sense, written in 1776, one of the first American bestsellers, in which Thomas Paine explained, by rational principles, the reason why these small colonies felt the necessity to separate from the Kingdom of Great Britain and the King of England. He explained their inherent desire for liberty, for freedom, freedom of religion, freedom of speech, the ability to select the people who govern them. And he explained it in ways that were understandable to all the people, not just the elite. Because the desire for freedom is universal. The desire for freedom adheres in the human mind, and it is part of the human soul. This is exactly the time we should consult our history. Look at what we've done in the past and see if we can't use it to help us now. We understand that our founders created the greatest country in the history of the world, the greatest democracy, the freest country, a country that has taken more people out of poverty than any country ever. All of us are so fortunate to be Americans. But a great deal of the reason for America's constant ability to self-improve is because we're able to reason, we're able to talk, we're able to analyze. We are able to apply our God-given common sense. So let's do it.